Hello, everybody. This is your girl, Michelle, with Girls Talk Real Talk, because when girls talk, just about anything can happen. So I'm so excited. I'm so very excited to have Karen Nance here with us today. She is a powerhouse. And I asked her to come on the show because I wanted our younger audience to be able to see the different things that you can do in a life depending on what type of education you get and how you can utilize and structure that education to be able to do some of the things that you want to do. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Karen. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
First, I want to thank you, Michelle, for having me on. I'm very honored to be here and have this opportunity to share with your listeners. I was born in San Francisco Bay Area in California, went to school here, went to college at UC Berkeley, graduated, went to law school in Philadelphia. And luckily, I had the opportunity as a freshman right after I completed my year to spend a summer in Africa through the Operation Crossroads Africa program. And I was able to go to 6 different countries in West Africa, and that really whet my appetite. I was only 18 at the time, and it was a fascinating opportunity. So in my junior year in college, I spent the year in Kenya, and it just developed from there, meeting different people, having different experiences. I have 2 sons. My youngest, actually, I adopted from Ethiopia in 2004, so I have a real close bond with the continent. I've only been to West Africa and East Africa, but I'd love to go to North and South. But I didn't know about those experiences when I started as a college freshman. And so it was through meeting other people and learning about different things that I learned about different programs. And so that's my early travel background. Since I was very young, probably elementary school, I always wanted to be an attorney. I liked the attorney shows, and so I knew that that was going to be my goal. So I did go to law school. And actually, the reason why I picked Temple Law School was because it was the only university that had a study abroad program to an African country, to Ghana. And so I felt that that was amazing. They also had a poverty law program. So I just would urge your listeners, whatever your interests or passions are, pick a school or pick a study or a job that reflects what your drive is, and you'll do well.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit because I'm really curious in regards to the study abroad program and then the trip to Africa that you actually participated in. How did that actually happen for you?
So the very first program I went on was called Operation Crossroads Africa, and it's actually the program that the Peace Corps program is based upon. It was started in 1958 by a Black man, Dr. James Robinson, and he wanted to have a program where students from the United States would go over to African countries. It's expanded since then to Brazil and some other third world countries, that we actually work and lived in the villages with the people that resided there, to learn how their lifestyle is. We lived in a hut. There was groups of 10 to 12 of us, and we all had a group leader. And there was, like I said, no electricity, no running water. And my assignment was an agricultural assignment. And so I uh, worked in the peanut fields, what they called groundnut fields, with the other co participants. And the good thing about the program, we were matched with students that actually resided in that country, in that village. So it was exciting. And I didn't know at the time, the only country I had heard of was Ghana.
Mhm.
And I was sent to the Gambia, and I had to look on the map to figure out where that was, because I'd never heard of it. It's a very small country, and it ends up that that's the country where Alex Haley's family is from. Kunta Kinte is from the Gambia. And so luckily the movie had come out prior to me going to the program, which was in 1997. So I convinced our group leader to take us to the village where Kunta Kinte's family was from, and they were still, his ancestors were still there. So that was an exciting experience. And so my professor at my first year of college was telling me about this program, and I said, "Well, no, I'm going to Ghana my junior year." I had a little schedule. I knew what I was going to do. I'm not doing that for the summer. I don't want to live in a village. I want to stay at the university. And so he broadened my perspective and said, "Why don't you give it a try?" And so that was how I ended up going and participating in that program. We had to raise the money. I think it was $1,500 to volunteer there for the summer. So that's what whet my appetite. And then I went on my junior year to spend the whole year in actually East Africa, because there was political problems in West Africa and Ghana at the time. So I had to pick another country, and I wanted to make sure it was an English speaking country because I didn't have any foreign language experience. And so I really benefited from that.
Okay. I'm always interested in hearing about the study abroad programs and the Peace Corps. I'm actually was in AmeriCorps. And
Okay.
so I didn't do the Peace Corps, but I did AmeriCorps, and it afforded me not only some money for college, but it also gave me an opportunity to realize my love for working with youth.
Hmm.
And a lot of times, at the time I had children, so I was around youth anyway, but there's a different feel when you're working with people that don't necessarily belong to you.
Right.
And you're able to see the struggle that they're going through. And it really gave me an opportunity to show my children how blessed they really were. Because
Definitely.
even here in Indianapolis, where I'm located, there were kids that were below poverty level that I was working with, and I made a point of bringing them in. So the experience that you had in the Peace Corps, um, if you had to introduce that experience to another student, let's say someone that's in their freshman year of college and has been introduced to them, what would you say to them in order to get them to totally understand the uniqueness of the experience?
Well, the most important thing is to be open minded and not have any preconceived notions. Back when I went, and this was in 1977, there was no internet. So there was very little opportunity to get information or to get pictures or that type of thing. So my imagination would run away with me. And I think the benefit of youth that youth have now is they have the opportunity to investigate and research, but still it's not the same as being there. And so I would just encourage people to be open minded. That's the most important thing, and not make any judgments. There were a lot of people, including family members, who were skeptical. Why would you go to Africa? Why would you do, why is that your interest? Why do you want to do that? And I think that as long as there's an opportunity to learn, there's always an opportunity to grow. So that's what we're here for, is to grow. And I believe that that's what I would tell young people, is that, and old people, people my age, you need to understand that we're here for a purpose, and there's always an opportunity to be better, to do better.
Okay, now you speak in my language, because I often say that we are here on purpose for a purpose. And
Exactly.
it is our responsibility to find out what that purpose is and then begin to live it out loud and in living color, because we don't realize it, but we have people that have been assigned to us. And
I
as a
agree.
result, our purpose is the answer to their life question. And so we have to make sure that we're positioned when it's time for those interactions to happen, so that we can provide the information in their lives
Exactly.
that they need to learn from us. So I'm really excited about that. Man, I'm thinking freshman in college, going to Ghana, living in a hut with no internet.
No internet.
Oh, that probably would have been a deal breaker for me. Probably would have been a deal breaker. But I think about it, and how did what you learned when you did the Peace Corps and when you did the study abroad program, how did that mold you and even make you more serious about becoming an attorney?
The thirst. If I could pick one word, I was thirsty. There was so much I wanted to get out of life and so much more to learn.
Mhm.
And so 6-week program after my freshman year. At 18, I was just a neophyte. I just didn't know what was in store for me, but I knew that I wanted to spend a year. My goal was to spend the junior year in Ghana, but like I said, because of the political problems there, I went to Kenya. The interesting thing is you go down a path and you think that this is the path you're supposed to go, even though the Gambia, uh, that country is English speaking.
Hmm.
Every country surrounding there is French speaking. So I took 3 semesters of French so that I could travel around that area. Well, there's no French speaking countries in Kenya, surrounding Kenya. So that was took me for a loop, and I felt like, well, that was a big waste of my time. But it's never a waste of time to learn,
Right.
even though I wasn't able to use the language, the French language in Kenya. And at the time, there was a lot of political unrest. The first African president, um, Kenyatta, had died the week before we got there. And so there was a lot of political unrest. Idi Amin was in Uganda. So all the borders surrounding Kenya were closed. We couldn't travel to Sudan. We couldn't travel to Uganda. So we had to make do with what was available. And so that was a lesson too, because at that time, unlike now, there there wasn't an awareness of what was going on politically around me in the
Mhm.
United States, like we're aware of now. But then I became acutely aware there were people that were arrested and who were political prisoners in Kenya. So that really heightened my awareness that we think that we're safe in this cocoon and we
Mhm.
go somewhere else, and there's no such thing as safety, you know, especially being a member of a minority group.
So when you were in Kenya and understanding the unrest that you were experiencing that was around you, not necessarily touching you personally, but was going on around you, did they did you guys have like a curfew where you had to be in by a certain time? Were there certain social standards that were put in place to try to keep you guys safe? What did that look like for you?
Well, luckily at the time, I think that people were in the state of just serious mourning. Their first president since emancipation. I'm sorry, emancipation, independence had just died, and so there was a lot of confusion and sadness. And so even for the first, I was there for the entire year. They had to decide what they were going to do about elections and that type of thing. And the sitting vice president became the president. And so, unless you were an outspoken person on a platform speaking out against the government, I didn't sense that there was any chance of any type of repercussions for just being in the capital city at that time. So I didn't feel unsafe, and there weren't any type of demonstrations or anything like that while I was there. So I think that with the second set of elections, there may have been, but not with when we were there in 78, 77, 78.
Okay. So when you are there and you've already been to Ghana and you've worked in the fields, and you've done the native work to the area. I'll say
Yes.
that to the area that you were in. What was it that you participated in when you were in Kenya?
I was in school. So it was my junior year of college, and we were required to take a full course load. I had an interesting major. I was a rhetoric major, which was the argumentative speaking and writing. So of course there was no comparison or a comparable uh, study curriculum there in Kenya. So I majored in. I took my classes in the literature department, and so we went to school. There were about 19 of us in all different areas of study. And so my area that was closely related to my degree major was literature. So we went to class with all the students at the University of Nairobi, and were required to do all of the work, and were graded based on the same criteria they were as well. So we were actually living in the dormitories as well. We weren't separated. My roommate was a Kenyan student. So we were totally immersed into the academics there. So that was a good thing.
So, with you being there at the university and being immersed in that culture, what was that like? Because I know their culture cannot be anything like our culture here.
it it was very different at the first semester, so up from, I'd say, August through January. It was a huge adjustment. The food, for example, we complain about dorm food here, but we're talking literally green eggs, and like, they called it ugali. Looks like grits, but just a white form of a blob on your plate. And so, that was difficult. And so just adjusting to the food. The water in the dormitory was always cold unless you got up at like 3 or 4 in the morning, because they had a limited amount of hot water, and if you didn't catch it then, you wouldn't get it. No washer dryers. No. What are the other amenities? Just just bare minimum. Just bare minimum. Um, the beds weren't beds; they were cots. Just like a mattress, not even a mattress, just a little thin piece of foam on a wire mattress. But at 20, you can deal with that. I it was okay. I can handle this. Everybody else is doing it. So, I just wonder. Well, I don't have to wonder. I know at this point that wouldn't be something that I could handle for a year, maybe a week or two, but not long term.
Okay. So, in regards to outside of the classroom, when you were interacting within that community where the college is, what was that like for you?
Well, the people that we associated initially were with the people that went on the program with us, that were from different UCs in California. That's University of California campuses. There, I think, were 9 or 10 of those campuses. So we all stuck together. But after about a month or so, we started spreading out and meeting the people that were probably mostly in our major and that type of thing. I did have 2 boyfriends during that year period, so that was interesting. Got to know their families, went to their homes outside of the capital city, and one lived in. There were 2 different ethnic groups, so that was interesting. The types of food that they ate were different, and so that gave me a different flavor, a different perspective, and that was good for me. It You can live in a vacuum in on campus and not have an opportunity to know what's going on outside of that. So a lot of us made friends and spent time with people outside of that environment, especially during the Christmas and spring breaks, because they would close down the campus. So we had to find our own places to live during those periods of time. So we did that.
Okay. So I want to go back to something that you said, because while you were explaining your experience, you had talked about there were 2 different ethnic backgrounds that you dealt with. So, being from the United States, never having gone to Africa myself,
Mhm.
what did you mean by that? Are you meaning that even though they were considered Africans, there were different ethnic belief systems and processes in which they lived their lives, that you experienced?
Well, most African countries, and I'm not an expert, but I can only talk about my experiences. There are several different, uh, we would call them back in the day tribes, but they're different ethnic groups that they speak different languages. And so when the Christianity came, when the missionaries came to colonize, everyone was to speak English if it was an English speaking country, or French. The French and the English colonized, and the British, I'm sorry, colonized a lot of most of Africa. There's a couple of countries there that speak Portuguese, and but for the most part, English or French were the predominant languages. So so luckily, the ethnic groups maintain their own native languages in the villages and outskirts. So people do understand and speak their languages if they're brought up in the villages or even around the immediate area. The national language in Kenya is English. In Tanzania, it's Swahili. So most people, unlike people in the United States, speak more than one language. They speak two, three, four different languages. And so that was my experience, is that the students outside the classroom, when they're intermingling with people of their own ethnic group, would speak that language. And when they're in class and interacting and everything is taught in English. So that's what I mean. And so in the dorms, people would, the types of food that would be offered in the dormitories, some would be one particular ethnic group and some would be another type of food. So they tried to handle all those, to account those different people from different areas. That's what they would do.
Okay. So I'm very intrigued. I'm enjoying that conversation about your experience in Africa, because it brings up the concept for the listening audience and also for us to begin to realize the significance of doing Peace Corps and the opportunities that it brings to you. So tell me again what your major was in college. Rhetoric?
Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so what was rhetoric again?
The art of argumentative speaking and writing.
Okay, so how did your classes in the literary department at the university play in with your major in rhetoric?
They did not at all. And so what happened was you would get college credit, but not credit in your major.
Okay.
And so that was fine. The grades counted, but not toward the major. And the best part about taking the literature classes, I never not undergraduate, in high school or even in college, had the opportunity to take African American studies courses. And so there was an opportunity to take a West African class, West African literature, South African literature, and African American literature. And so I learned about our people by being in Africa.
Okay.
So that was a blessing that I didn't expect. So that was wonderful for me.
Okay, so you've come back to the United States. You've done your year abroad. You're finishing out college. You're going into law school, and you have what discipline did you choose in law to focus on?
I wanted to focus on criminal law. I went to Temple Law School in Philadelphia. There was a clinic that worked with underprivileged residents in the area, because Philadelphia, Temple is in North Philadelphia, which is at the time was a low income area.
Okay.
So I believed that when I came back to California, that I would be able to major in poverty law. They didn't have that discipline, if you call it, when I came back to California, but that was what intrigued me, both the fact that it was the only law school that had a program where you could go to Ghana for the summer, and also had a poverty law program. And our entering class had about 30 African American students, which was unheard of for a non-Black law school, a non-historically Black college.
Okay, so when you made this decision, and you who advised you to begin to looking at Temple, or was that something that you found on your own?
It's something that I found on my own. The reality is I applied to 15 schools, and that was the only school I got accepted to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the evidently meant for you to be at Temple.
Definitely.
Meant for you to be there. So you're there, and you are a part of the university. You're a part of the community that the university is in. And you said at the time that it was a low poverty area.
Yes.
And so understanding the work that you're doing, how did that work that you were doing then translate into the work that you did once you graduated from the law school?
It continued. I have never worked in the private sector. I've always worked for the government. My idea was I wanted to work on the side of the population that needed assistance, needed financial assistance. So I worked as an attorney for the public defender's office, which is
Mhm.
on the criminal side. I did that for about 11 years, and then I switched over to working for the government as a child support attorney. And then I did that not intentionally, but I stayed there for about 20 years. And then at this point, since March, I've been out on my own with my own practice. I also, during that 20-year period, I went on my own and self-studied and took the private investigator exam and passed that exam, and have an interest in restorative justice, which is an alternative to the legal process of people trying to resolve their issues. And also I do mediation.
Okay, so let's go back. What made you decide to go and get your license as a private investigator?
I watch a lot of TV. I'll just be honest. you know, I watch a lot of TV, and I wondered how difficult it could be. And also, I've always had a knack for research. I I say, as I mentioned, I had two boyfriends, not at the same time when I was in Kenya, and so when I left Kenya, we didn't have a way of keeping in contact, but somehow I always was able to find him. And I way before the internet, I was just have that's just one of my strong points. I just have a knack for research and seeking out and finding people, and so I wanted to build upon that.
Mhm.
So I took the private investigator exam here in California and passed the exam. And I was talking to somebody the other day, and they're like, "Oh, it must be so hard. It must be so hard to be a lawyer." The interesting thing is you can pass the bar exam in California without going to law school. You can pass a private investigator exam without going to law school. And a lot of people don't realize that they stop or they put limitations on themselves
Mhm.
without, oh, I can't afford that. Oh, it's going to take me 3 years or 4 years to do that. Well, if we're blessed to be here in 3 or 4 years, you need to have done something. That's how I look at it. So I on my own looked into, well, what can I do? What do I need to do to become a mediator? What do I need to do to become a restorative justice facilitator? And that my skill of being able to do research, I was able to find out, and the internet has been a huge blessing for me because I already had that knack anyway to research and find things. So I like different channels, different ways of helping people, and not just one way. Even though I'm an attorney and I'm a practicing attorney, I don't feel that that's a good way to resolve 90% of the issues. It's a point of contention where there's conflict. There's always somebody that wins and somebody that loses. So having restorative justice, having that opportunity to try to have an alternative so that both people feel that their needs are met. That is something that's much more appealing to me.
Okay, so what made you decide to step out on your own?
A lot of things. I felt that my skills weren't appreciated where I was, and my interests exceeded more than what the job provided. I was in a box. Child support is the government trying to make sure that a lofty goal to make sure that children are being provided for by the parent that is not doesn't have the children with them full time or most of the time. And my perspective over 20 years of working in that area is that it's a much more complicated issue. We need to deal
Mhm.
with custody, visitation issues, and a lot of the frustration with non custodial parent fathers, not that it's all fathers, but people are saying, you want to take my money, but you're not enforcing my custody visitation order. And so I found myself many times being the mediator and trying to
Mhm.
address those issues, and that's not my job description. So so and I was told that on more than one occasion. And I like dealing with the whole person. It's like, why wouldn't we, deal with that instead of telling somebody, I don't help, I'm not going to help you with that. But that's what I need help with. And so I'm going to do whatever I can to facilitate, because in the end result is we're trying to help the children. So
Mhm.
why wouldn't we try to mediate and make sure that the parents are on the same page? So the number one answer is I was working outside my job description. And so I wanted to be in a position where I could provide more assistance to and address what people needed, instead of putting a hammer down saying you're going to pay, we
Mhm.
don't care if you visit or see your kid at all, you need to pay. That's Karen's version. And after 20 years I just was ready to do something else.
I can understand that. I can understand you growing out of that place. That place no longer was enough to house your interest.
Definitely.
And so I'm I enjoy hearing that because two things. One thing, I did conflict resolution when I was in AmeriCorps, so I
Okay.
I haven't kept up on it probably in the last 10 years, but um, I was a community conflict resolution mediator.
Okay.
And so I would literally go into the community to different places and community centers, mostly here in Indianapolis. And if people chose to mediate, then we had a responsibility to hear both sides. And
Mm,
I had the unique opportunity to be able to teach conflict resolution to middle
wow.
schoolers
Okay.
and to create a conflict remediation program in a middle school that was in a poor area here in the city.
Mm,
And so we taught the youth conflict resolution skills, and then they would conduct and facilitate the mediations between their
awesome.
classmates.
That's restorative justice, and in the schools. So just fancier name for
Yeah.
restorative justice for what you were for. It is conflict resolution. That's amazing.
And so
That's
the
great.
thing that I enjoyed most about it, and the one lesson that I learned in the midst of that, is that we learn better peer to peer.
Mm-hmm.
I won't be intimidated if I'm dealing with my peer who's helping me get to a resolution than I am to someone that is in leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like I'm not going to have my needs met, and I'm really not going to be heard on the level that
Exactly.
I feel like I need to be heard. And so, your work that you did in Ghana, your year abroad in Kenya, the work that you did when you were going to Temple and working with the clinic that you work with, do you feel like that all set a tone for you to easily step into the restorative justice field?
Definitely. And I spent a year, 2018 to 2019, working in a local prison through with the restorative justice program. And it was a year-long program. I have to say that I believe I learned more than they did, or they gave me more than I was able to give them. And so the pull for me is there's such a need with both the school age and with the prison population. And so it's a pull. It's hard. There's a lot of work needed in both areas. Unfortunately, with COVID, that that ability to go into the prisons ended, and luckily the class that I was working with a co-facilitator, they ended up finishing up in November of 2018. But that's my struggle, is finding uh, where to apply my time, because the need is huge in both areas. Huge.
And so, in what is you're talking about in regards to restorative justice, um, how has it really been received by the individuals that you're working with? How are they receiving that concept? Because it's totally different than going into the actual courtroom and dealing with a judge and dealing with attorneys and having juries or having bench trials and all of that. How are they receiving that training and that information?
Well, I'm working with people that have already been convicted, or that's a group of people that I was working with. And
Mhm.
so it's an opportunity for them because it's a curriculum that we had them follow to just sit back and examine their life. And these are all, it's a totally voluntary program. And so they have to go through the steps. It's not a 12-step program, but it's a program where they look at their family circumstances, their economic circumstances. Obviously, I don't know if it's obvious to everyone, but most of the people that are incarcerated are people of color, primarily African Americans and Latinx peoples. And so just understanding the dynamic, and I would be remiss not to mention, given the situation has gotten a lot worse since November of 2018 when I stopped working there. So I would believe that it's important. A lot of people don't understand why are we in this situation? Why are so many more of us incarcerated than other people when we're not the majority of people committing the crimes? And so it's a realization. There's not any solutions, but I think that giving people tools to navigate and figure out, well, I'm going to get out of this institution, so what am I going to do? There's still racism. There's still the possibility that I may be reoffend, and what do I need to do to get my life together so I'm not in that situation again? And so that's the challenge, I believe. And a lot of people are in custody that shouldn't be in custody based on the type of crime. I there are many individuals whose stories are, I sold a piece of candy the third time and I'm looking at life when there was a three strikes law. So there are a lot of people, luckily, in California and other parts of the country that are working on that. So it's a lot of injustice. And so it's stressful and it's sad, and we can't give up. That's my perspective. We just have to replenish, refresh, and keep the fight going.
So even though your program ended in November of 2018, um, is the program still going on?
Oh, I'm sorry, it was November 2019. The program, the institution we were working at, they're closing that institution down. So the people there are going to other institutions. And so the program will continue with that facilitator in a different institution. I haven't worked with that facility since the COVID shut down. And so I've done some more training with restorative justice in schools and have been asked to do some work in that area. And at the same time, I'm still doing mediations. And so I'm trying to decide, and I'm writing a book. And so I'm trying to figure out where I want to apply my time. So right now I'm writing a book about my grandmother, who was a civil rights activist. So that's my focus at this time.
So a great segue, perfect segue into what I want to talk about. Tell me about your grandmother and what has inspired you to write this book.
Oh, thank you for asking. My grandmother, her name is Ethel Ray Nance. She was born in 1899 and she died in 1992. And she was very active in the Harlem Renaissance in the 1920s. She was W.E.B. Du Bois's secretary for over 40 years. She worked with Langston Hughes and obviously W.E.B. Du Bois, and there were two major Black magazines at the time, the Crisis and the Opportunity, and she was the editor, helped with the editing of those both of those different magazines. One was with Charles S. Johnson, the other was with W.E.B. Du Bois. She came out to California in the 40s, and at that time, the first Supreme Court Justice, Thurgood Marshall, was working with the NAACP before he was appointed to the bench in helping men that were in Black naval men who were in Korea and in Japan. They were being discriminated against. And so the NAACP branch in the San Francisco Bay Area was raising funds for a Thurgood Marshall to represent these men there. And so she was very instrumental in working with that group and raising funds. So she was working with Thurgood Marshall as well. And so she has a very rich history. The book that I'm writing is Ethel Ray Nance more than just a footnote, because she's mentioned in probably 50 or 60 books, but just a one liner, she
Mhm.
did this, she did that. And so I want to give her the proper credit and exposure that she's entitled to. So I'm really excited about that. And it'll be out before the end of this year.
So as we look at this, and I when I read your bio, I was like, wow. I understand legacy. I,
Mm,
I'm I am the youngest daughter of three. Um, Four kids, three daughters
okay.
with my mom. And my mother, wow, she is a force to be reckoned with. And the work that she has done in teaching and in working with youth and touching lives and being that quiet champion
Hmm.
behind the scenes sometimes, but the quiet champion has has created the avenue for me to make choices that I'm making today that I never thought back when I was a teenager in early 20s. I'm like, no, I'll never be like her ever
Hmm.
in life. And then you find that those influences are the ones that help guide you into the direction that you are to be in.
Right.
And so, if you had to tell one story about your grandmother, what would that be? One of your
One
fondest
story.
memories.
She, and this was probably in the 70s. So she was already 70 years old at the time. She was one of the founding members of the African American Historical and Cultural Society in San Francisco. So she would have me come to work. I was probably 15 or 16 years old, do some typing and filing. I didn't know at the time that she was a volunteer
Mhm.
and I would get paid, but she was the one paying me, not
Oh,
the
wow.
institution. So I didn't know that for years. And through her work there, a lot of people would come through there. For example, uh, Alex Haley, when he wrote his book Roots, she would make sure that I would meet these people and these famous people. And so I met Alex Haley. I got his autograph. Little did I know that next summer I would be going to the Gambia and meeting his ancestors in the village that were Kunta Kinte's relatives. So that was amazing. She made sure that at the time at 15, I didn't know who these people were. I didn't care who they were. I wanted to spend time with her, and so I have to say that it took me to my 20s and 30s to say, wow, that was an amazing opportunity she provided for me. So I still have the autograph now, and I feel that it has special meaning because I was able to go to the Gambia just coincidentally. I had no idea that that would happen for me, and so I was really honored, and it's a blessing. It was really a blessing for me.
So, the influence that your grandmother had in your life, do you feel like she is the reason why you have taken on the lifestyle and the career that you've taken on?
I definitely feel that way. The interesting thing is that she never shared her experiences in terms of the people that she knew and the
Mhm.
people that she worked with. She was very soft-spoken and humble, and so she would direct me. I had no idea. I thought that she was just a secretary. I didn't know the impact of the Harlem Renaissance, and she worked with Du Bois when he started the United Nations and they had their first conference in San Francisco. She was very instrumental in that. She never mentioned that to me. And she was always concerned about all of her grandkids and wanted to focus on what they were doing. She was very
Mhm.
supportive of me going to law school. She was very supportive of me going to Africa, but she never said, well, I know this person, or I did this, or I did that. And so I had a much greater appreciation of her humility after she was gone. And I said, wow, she could have been boisterous. She could have dropped names and that type of thing, but that wasn't the type of person that she was. So I feel very honored. And she set an example. She set a great example for all of us, for all of her children and grandchildren.
I take my hats off to your grandmother for the great work that she did and even the ones that we consider are the quiet heroes, the ones that are behind the scenes. The other work couldn't get done if they didn't do what they did. So I really thank God for the work that she did because we have opportunities today because of what she did.
Right.
And um, so in the book, how are you structuring your book? You're going to talk about her experiences working as an activist and as a secretary and that type of thing. Is it going to be like a biography or is it just going to be like you telling the story?
It's going to be me telling the story from her perspective.
Okay.
Luckily, because she had that background as a secretary and a stenographer, she kept many, many documents, many, many pictures. I have probably over 1,000 documents that have been accumulated. I think that because there's been so much written, even though it's just in a footnote in different books, the story that is not told, I should say, is the story of her being the oldest graduate from the University of San Francisco at age 79.
Wow.
Um, so things that people wouldn't know because she was so humble, things that are not written in books. So the information about her and Du Bois and their relationship, even though it was all a business relationship, there was people insinuated that there was something more to it than that.
Mhm.
Um, but she had relationships, working relationships with a lot of different people. I didn't realize until I started digging into her history, for example, that she had been married 3 times to the same person. Married, divorced, married, divorced. And she was my grandmother. So she didn't, I didn't see that part of it. And that was never discussed. And so
Mhm.
just to highlight that she was human. Basically, that's the most important thing. Her mother was born in Sweden, and she came to Minnesota because her brother was there. Her father was from North Carolina, African American who went to the North for a better life. And so back in 1890, it was not really common for a Black man to marry a white woman.
Mhm.
And even though it wasn't against the law in Minnesota, they were the only, one of the only, they were definitely the only Black family in Duluth, Minnesota. And they lived 5 blocks from where the 3 men were lynched in 1920, 100 years ago. The 3 circus men were hung because a white woman said that they raped her. So that is a story that from their perspective, from my grandmother's perspective and her father's perspective. So to bring out things that haven't been brought out about her life is the point of is what I want to bring out in the book and how she influenced me. Yeah, she lived a full life. She lived to be 93.
Oh wow. Oh
Yeah,
wow. That is a full life.
yes, it is. If we all could be so lucky. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
My mom will actually be 83 this year.
Oh, congratulations.
So you look at them and you see mom or you see grandma or you see aunt or
Yep.
whatever. You don't see what other people see
Right.
because you're on the inside looking in, while everybody else is on the outside looking in.
Yep.
And so you don't see the nuances that other people find intriguing or important because it's just mom, it's just grandma.
Exactly.
It's
Hmm.
just who they are. And you never really understand the footprint that they are leaving for you to be able to follow in your own journey called life. So
Exactly.
in the work that you're doing, in the mediation, the restorative justice, the writing of the book, um, what part of that is really the part that touches your heart, that makes your heart sing?
The ability to learn and give at the same time. It's not just a one-way street. And honestly, that's what fills me is Muhammad Ali said that service to others is the rent we pay here for our space on earth. And so to me, I feel like I've had such a blessing to have a healthy life, to have a roof over my head, food to eat. And so I'm obligated to give back. And so it's just finding the way to give back, and at the same time realize that I'm getting so much more in return. I'm full. My cup is full. And
Mhm.
the dilemma comes in where do I spend my time? How do I do that? What is the best way to be of service? What talents do I have that I can share, that I can be most effective? There are many things I can do, but I'm not that effective because of a lot of different situations or what's happening in the world. But finding where I can be most useful.
Mhm.
That's what my calling is.
Okay. So if you had a 15, 16-year-old young woman that came to you and said, I'm lost. I don't know what to do. I don't know what career to go after. School is, even though I get good grades and I bring home honor roll grades, I don't know what I want to do. What would you say to them?
I would say what makes your heart sing? What do you like to draw? Do you like to sing? Do you like to dance? And there's some people say, "Oh, I don't know. I don't know what I like to do." And then I would invite them to have different experiences, which is if they were in my area, well, let's go here. Obviously with COVID, it's more difficult, but I think there's still a lot of opportunities because there's so much on social media. There's so many different movies, films, that type of thing. Without social media, I wouldn't have met you, you know?
Right.
And so I think that there's huge opportunities to learn and explore. And, with YouTube, you know, 20, 30 seconds, nope, not interested in that. I wouldn't have a problem spending a day, 2 days, however long it takes to try different things, to expose them to different things. Oh, I might be interested in that. I never knew that existed. And so I think that spending one-on-one time with someone, even though we can't do that physically, there's Zoom, we can sit there and explore.
Mhm.
And I think showing someone that I'm here for you, I don't have nothing's more important than you right now, and I will spend as much time as needed to help you get to the space where you find something that you think you like. And there's nothing wrong with finding something and saying, it's not what I thought it was supposed to, what I thought it turned out to be. There's a billion other things that we can explore. And so to me, I think it's giving that person a one-on-one and say, there's something in this world that will appeal to you, that will warm your heart, and I will stick with you and find out what that is and help support you to figure out how you can get there. Because I don't believe that there's something for everyone and there's some way to generate income for everyone. And we just have to help them find it, regardless of how old we are.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Thank you so very much
You're
for
very
sharing your
welcome.
experiences with us. I am I am intrigued. I might have to try to figure out how I'm going to get to Africa to learn a little bit more about the culture, because I am Americanized. So and I know the cultures are different. Thank you for your work that you have done with restorative justice, and thank you for the work that you have done with the poverty level and below poverty level individuals. And thank you for even sharing your grandmother with the rest of the world, because it's so easy to keep that information to
Mm.
yourself and to hold it close. This is my family heritage, my people, and
Yeah.
not share it with everyone else. So when the book comes out, you're going to have to let me know so that we
Okay.
can make sure that we get you back on the podcast so
Thank
that we
you.
get highlighted and make sure that people know um, the gem that she was,
Yes.
and
Thank you so
the
much.
work that she did.
Yeah. And I appreciate you. I've learned so much from you, and I can't wait to hear more about your work because it's fascinating. And thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here. It's much appreciated. Thank you so much.
That's no problem, no problem. So, again, everybody, this is Karen Nance. She is an attorney, an investigator, an activist, and an author. And so, we thank you for coming on the show today. So, for anyone that is interested, I have something totally exciting coming up tomorrow that I am just over the moon excited about. Everybody that knows me knows that I like to bring important and informative conversations to the platform that open our eyes and gives us an opportunity to see life in a different aspect. As everyone knows, we have experienced some things recently that has populated the news, that has created sadness, anger, uncertainty, insecurity within the American community. And so tomorrow, we will have Karen back on again with a panel of individuals that will be coming on to discuss the events that happened in Washington, D.C. on yesterday. And we will be talking about the attack on the democratic process. A lot of people in the news have said that it has been an attack on the Capitol. But if you think about it, it really was an attack on the democratic process. And so we're going to talk about that tomorrow at 7:00 in this same space. And we're also going to have Karen here. We're going to have Rita Green. We're going to have Erica Salih. We're going to have Greg Merriweather. And then we're going to have Ibram Tanner that are going to be on. And we're going to be talking about the attack on the democratic process. And we're going to be having that conversation in this space tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so I want you to come on, listen, share your voice, ask your questions, because it's going to be interactive. And I think that it's necessary for us to have this conversation now to prepare us for the conversations that are going to be taking place later. So, Karen, thank you again for sharing your life, your legacy, your love, and your passion with our audience. And I look forward to talking to you again tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. Take care.
This is Michelle with Girls Talk Real Talk, because when girls talk, just about anything can happen. So we'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. for the conversation that we'll be having on the attack on the democratic process. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.